That's a clown question, bro.
So I'm gonna kick some dirt.
He gets on base.
Just a bit outside.
I'm not the type of player that's going to be Johnny Hustle.
If you don't want me to watch the ball, you can go get it out of the ocean.
And welcome to Above Replacement Radio, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, this is our 27th round of history that we've done, and it is the first time we are doing it from school.
Yes, it is. Normally, when we've done it at school, it has been, usually during the season, or I guess technically we did, radio last year, but
we didn't. History wasn't a thing. Yeah,
that's not available on Apple Podcasts or anything. But yeah, 27 history episodes. Finally doing it at Springfield College, where this whole thing originated.
That's right.
Where the show originated, and then history soon followed. But we're talking about the greatest third baseman of all time, Mike Schmidt, who, when I started doing this list, I recognized that for some reason, I knew a decent amount about the 50s and 60s baseball. I knew about, the 90s and up to today, but for some reason I kind of blanked out on the 70s and 80s part of baseball, and Mike Schmidt is probably the face of that era.
Without a doubt.
At least in terms of position players. There were a ton of pitchers that dominated that era, but in terms of position players, Mike Schmidt is the face of the 70s/80s. I wouldn't pin it to one decade, of course, because the player of the 70s was probably Joe Morgan, and the player of the 80s was probably Ricky Henderson. But if you combine those two decades, that's where you get Mike Schmidt. So we'll get into Mike Schmidt, and unfortunately, to kind of go behind the scenes, usually, when I do the player research, they all have a nice Society for American Baseball Research page. But when I looked it up for Mike Schmidt, and I didn't know that Society for American Baseball Research was going to be such a big source when I started the list, so I didn't really check on that. Mike Schmidt does not have a complete or anything attached to a Society for American Baseball Research page.
How is that possible?
Yeah, it is. It says it's assigned to, I believe, a man named Henry Kern, but the guy's been retired for 32, or I guess, to be fair, 31 years, and we still do not have a full Society for American Baseball Research.
Literally, Flame Delhi, who played one game, has a full list of things on his Society for American Baseball Research page. He played one game 2 days after the Titanic sunk in 1912, but Mike Schmidt doesn't have one.
Yeah, no. So, usually we're able to get into the off the field story, but there's really not that much out there on the guy. Looked up, tried to get a sort of documentary on him. There's really not anything there. Wikipedia can only give you so much, especially since Wikipedia also relies a lot on, Society for American Baseball Research.
Yeah.
But we did not get that. So get ready for a very short growing up section of the history player we're talking about. It's going to be a lot of numbers, not a lot of storylines particularly. So be ready for that. It was pretty bad.
I cannot believe he doesn't have a Society of American Baseball Research page.
I mean, technically he does, but there's nothing under it.
No, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's bad. Maybe we should contact them about it, but it should be done as soon as possible. But what we do know is Mike Schmidt was born in Dayton, Ohio, and obviously there's not very much on him growing up. just a guy from Ohio. His parents managed an aquatic club, and Mike was a lifeguard there. So that's what he did, probably for money, late in his growing up stage. And he, of course, played Little League and high school baseball. And in college, so he attended and played at Ohio University. And he was named first team all conference in the 1969, 1970, and 1971 seasons. And he was named an All American in 1970 and 1971. He also slugged .640 throughout his college career, obviously being able to be a big power threat in Division I college. And in 1970, he helped lead Ohio University to the College World Series. And eventually, after his college career came to a close, he was drafted in the second round with the 30th overall pick in the 1971 MLB draft.
So Mike Schmidt is now a professional baseball player. And in 1971 with the Phillies, in Double-A, he hit .211 with a .652 OPS in 74 games. So not particularly lighting the world on fire, but that would change in 1972 when he hit .291 with a .960 OPS in 131 games. And that year, he was called up to the Phillies in September of 1972. So now we get into the beginning stages of the major league career of Mike Schmidt. Very brief stint with the Phillies in 72. He hit .206 with a .619 OPS in 40 plate appearances in his first year. So, you know, he has some growing pains, which is fine. A lot of people do. And it sort of continued into 1973. He hit .196 with a .697 OPS, a .92 OPS plus, and a .95 weighted runs created plus. He also had the highest strikeout percentage of anyone with 400 plus plate appearances. That was a 30.7% strikeout rate. And unfortunately, he ended his season on a 1-for-29 slump with 19 strikeouts. So Mike Schmidt kind of got off to a slow start, but there was much more in store.
So now we finally get to where Mike Schmidt becomes Mike Schmidt. And these next 2 years of Mike Schmidt's career is where, you know, he's getting something started, and the Phillies, you know, the late 70s, early 80s Phillies, as we know it, is starting to get something started as well. So in 1974, Mike Schmidt immediately improved pretty drastically. His strikeout percentage went from 30.4% to 20.1%, about a 10% dip there, which is very significant in terms of strikeout percentage. And he hit .282 with a .941 OPS, 158 OPS plus, and 157 weighted runs created plus. Also, when runners were in scoring position, he did very well there. He hit .325 with men in scoring position, and he ended up finishing second in OPS, third in weighted runs created plus, and second in OPS, third in OPS plus, and third in weighted runs created plus. He also led the league in home runs with 36 and slugging with a .546. So in his second full year, leading the league in homers. And he also was able to do it on the other side of the diamond, finished fourth in defensive WAR and fourth in defensive runs above average among all fielders. And he was also able to do it from a base running standpoint, stealing 23 bases. And Schmidt, with this spectacular season, both offensively with the bat, on the bases, and in the field, led the league in both B-WAR and F-WAR, and he finished sixth in the MVP vote. And his 1974 season has the most B-WAR in a single season by a third baseman before their age 25 season.
How about that?
And his 1974 is also the only season by a player before their age 25 season with 7.7 plus offensive WAR and 2.4 plus D-WAR.
How about that?
And it is the only season by a player before their age 25 season with 100 plus walks, 35 plus home runs, and 20 plus stolen bases.
How about
And lastly, Schmidt's 1974 is the only season in baseball history with 35 plus home runs, 105 plus walks, and 2.3 plus defensive WAR.
How about that?
And the Phillies went 80 and 82, which doesn't sound very exciting, but it was an improvement. This was their best record in 7 years since 1967.
So for the first time in quite a while, the Phillies had expectations going into the 1975 season, and Mike Schmidt wasn't living up to them early. In 1975, his previous season had been looking like a fluke. Through July 8th, he was hitting .212 with a .732 OPS. And after this point, from July 8th on, he hit .291 with a .1064 OPS. In the second half, he led the National League in home runs, weighted runs created plus, and FWAR. He also had the fourth most stolen bases, so he was doing it all offensively. And overall in the season, he ended up with a .249 average, an .890 OPS, 142 OPS plus, 142 weighted runs created plus, and 29 stolen bases. He finished 5th in OPS, 7th in OPS plus, 7th in weighted runs created plus, and 9th in stolen bases. He led the league in home runs also with 38. He finished 4th in DWAR and 4th in defensive runs above average. He finished 2nd in BWAR and 2nd in FWAR. This got him 16th in the MVP vote, and this is the only season by a player in their age 25 season or younger with 35 plus home runs, 26 plus stolen bases, and 2 plus DWAR. The Phillies went on to go 86 and 76. Very good record, but not quite good enough as they missed the playoffs once again.
And, now we get into a 4-year stage of Mike Schmidt's career where he's doing very well, but he's not really bringing home, the ultimate individual prize in a season. And the Phillies are doing very well, but they're not getting the ultimate prize either. This is, where neither of them are quite there yet. But in 1976, on April 17th, the Phillies, unfortunately, were down in a hole, down 13-2 to the Chicago Cubs. Where's this? There it is.
1-1 pitch to Schmidt. Swing, a long drive. That is going to be well out of here. Towering home run. Here's the 3-1 pitch to him. Swing, a line drive, deep left field. Summers back. It is gone, a home run. Here's the pitch to Schmidt. Long drive up in the wind in right field. Forget about this one. It's out of here. Here's the pitch to Schmidt. Drilled toward left field. It's in the alley, and it is gone. That's a home run for Schmidt. He has hit 4 straight. He drilled it. It was not his hardest hit of the day, but he's got his 4th consecutive home run. And the Phils have taken the lead 17-15.
So there it is, a 4 home run game for Mike Schmidt. And the Phillies, after being down 13-2, ended up winning 18-16. And, that was on the back of 4 home runs, 8 RBI from Mike Schmidt. And this game remains the only game in the history of game logs with 4 plus home runs, 8 plus RBI, and 0.4 plus win probability added.
How about that?
And Schmidt did not stop there. He hit home runs in each of his next 3 games, didn't hit a home run in the 4th game, hit a home run in the 5th, no home run in the 6th game, then 2 home runs in the 7th game after that 4 home run game. So this was a span of 8 games in which Mike Schmidt hit 10 home runs in April of 1976.
Wild.
And at the time, his 11 home runs in the month of April were tied for the April record. And through June 29th, Schmidt was hitting .292 with a 10.21 OPS, and the Phillies were 50-20 with a 9.5 game lead in the NL East. And Schmidt ended up with a 262 average, 900 OPS, 151 OPS plus, and 151 weighted runs created plus. And he ended up finishing third in OPS, second in OPS plus, second in weighted runs created plus, ninth in DWAR, and eighth in defensive runs above average. And Schmidt, once again, led the league in home runs with 38. And he finished second in BWAR and second in FWAR, of course, to the great Joe Morgan. And he finished third in the MVP vote. And that is where this 1976 was where Mike Schmidt won his first Gold Glove as well. So, not bringing home the MVP, but did bring back some hardware. And the Phillies finally went 101-61 and won the National League East. And we head on to the postseason where the Phillies are running into the Big Red Machine. So in the first two games of the NLCS versus the Reds, Schmidt went 1 for 8 with a sacrifice fly. And in game 3, Schmidt went 3 for 5 with an RBI double, but the Phillies lost 7-6 and would end up getting swept in that series. So now we move on to 1977.
So going into this season, the Phillies had a title to defend, and it was the division title. Mike Schmidt hit 274 this season with a 967 OPS, 151 OPS plus, and 155 weighted runs created plus. He finished fourth in OPS, fourth in OPS plus, fourth in weighted runs created plus, fourth in DWAR, and fourth, once again, in defensive runs above average. He was fourth in just about everything. But he did lead the league in both BWAR and FWAR. He led wins above replacement on both websites. This gave him 10th in the MVP vote. He also won his second Gold Glove. This was his fourth season with 35 plus home runs, 100 plus walks, and 12 plus stolen bases. No one else has more than 2 of such seasons through their age 27 season, and there is only one other player with multiple such seasons through age 27. Who's that other player?
It might have been A-Rod.
That sounds about right.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
That sounds about right. It is the only season since 1931 with 35 plus home runs, 100 plus walks, 10 plus triples, and 15 stolen bases. His 1974 and 1977 seasons are the only in baseball history with 35 plus home runs, 101 plus walks, and 2.3 plus DWAR. His 1977 is the only season in baseball history with 35 plus home runs, 100 plus walks, and 2.5 plus DWAR. And the Phillies replicated their same record from the previous year, going 101-61. And in the postseason, in Game 1, with the game tied in the top of the ninth against the Dodgers, he hit a go-ahead RBI single, helping the Phillies win 7-5 in the first game. But however, the 3 games after that were a much different story. Schmidt went 0 for 11 with 2 walks, and the Phillies lost each game, once again falling short in the playoffs.
So now on to 1978, which is probably a season that maybe Schmidt would have liked to forget, even though it was still a very good season by most players' standards. Schmidt did not hit more than 5 home runs in a month. This was a guy who was leading in home runs consistently ever since he was 24 years old. He was leading the league in home runs, but did not get more than 5 in a month. He also ended up with 21 home runs in 145 games after 4 consecutive seasons with 36 plus home runs. So, 4 straight with 36 plus, only getting 21 in 1978. And in 1979, in a reflective interview, he said, "Last season, I just about accepted the idea I was a dead streak hitter and would never change. All I could do was the same old thing, bear down on defense and draw some walks when I was cold so I wouldn't be useless." So he kind of just, it kind of represents the determination of a great athlete like Schmidt, trying to do what he could. He wasn't able to hit home runs that year, still trying to get on base, still trying to provide some Gold Glove defense. And he ended up hitting 251 with a 798 OPS, 122 OPS plus, and 121 weighted runs created plus. And he finished 7th in defensive WAR and 7th in defensive runs above average. And he ended up finishing 2nd in B WAR and 6th in F WAR. And Schmidt, as he talked about previously, was very good on defense still, was able to get him in the top 10 in wins above replacement, and it was able to get him his 3rd consecutive Gold Glove. And the Phillies ended up going 90-72 and winning the National League East. And in the postseason, Schmidt went 3 for 15 with 2 walks and an RBI, while the Phillies lost the series in 4 games to the Dodgers. So very uneventful once again for Schmidt and the Phillies in the playoffs.
So now we move on to 1979, the last year of the decade. And Mike Schmidt had an anomaly of a game on May 17th. He went 2 for 4 with 2 home runs, 4 walks, 3 runs scored, and 4 RBI in a 23-22 10-inning victory over the Cubs. Because apparently it only happens against the Cubs. And this is the only game in the history of game logs that goes back to 1901 with 2+ home runs, 3+ runs scored, 4+ RBI, and 4+ walks. And on the year, Mike Schmidt ended up hitting 253 with a 950 OPS, a 154 OPS plus, and a 152 weighted runs created plus. He also finished 3rd in OPS, 3rd in OPS plus, and 4th in weighted runs created plus. He also led the league in walks with 120. He finished 2nd in B WAR and 2nd in F WAR. This gave him 13th in the MVP vote, and it also gave him his 4th Gold Glove award. And this remains the only season in baseball history with 45+ home runs, 120+ walks, and 1+ D WAR. Unfortunately, the Phillies regressed as a team as they finished 84-78, giving them the 4th best record in their own division.
But now we are on to a different era of Mike Schmidt's career where finally he's bringing home the hardware, both for himself and the team, and the name on the on the name of both the front of the jersey and the back of the jersey. So in 1980, entering September 20th, the Phillies were 1.5 games behind in the National League East. And from September 20th on, Schmidt hit 9 home runs in 15 games, hitting .333 with a 1246 OPS. That's called rising to the occasion. With 3 games left to play, the Phillies and Expos were tied for first place in the National League East, and they were playing each other in a 3-game series. So no excuses, no way to back into the postseason. You got to win in order to win that NL East. And in the first game of the series, Schmidt drove in each of the Phillies 2 runs in a 2-1 victory. And in the second game of the series, the game went into extras, and Schmidt came up in the top of the 11th with a man on first, looking to seal that division.
Long drive to left field. He buried it. He buried it way back. Out of here. Home run. Mike Schmidt puts the Phillies up 6-4. Oh, what a drive by Schmidt. Unbelievable.
So as the announcer says, he buries it. He makes it a 6-4 ball game for the Phillies in a game where if they win, they clinch that game, and the Phillies ended up winning that game by that score of 6-4 and winning the division. And Schmidt ended up hitting .286 with a 1,004 OPS, 171 OPS plus, and 172 weighted runs created plus. Schmidt also finished 8th in defensive WAR. He also led the league in total bases. He led the league in home runs with 48, a career high for him. RBI with 121, which is also a career high for him. Slugging with a 624, OPS plus, and weighted runs created plus. He all led the league in those. And as a result, with that defense as well, led the league in both Baseball Reference WAR and Fangraphs WAR. And Schmidt won the MVP unanimously and won the Gold Glove and the Silver Slugger in the Silver Slugger was in its inaugural season. So, of course, Mike Schmidt is going to be the first one to win that at third base in the National League. And his 1980 is the only season in baseball history with 48 plus home runs, 80 plus walks, and 1.5 plus D-WAR.
How about that?
So now we get into that postseason where Schmidt obviously led the Phillies to. So in the NLCS, unfortunately, Schmidt had some repeated playoff woes again. He hit 208 with a 490 OPS with 1 RBI in 5 games, and he went 1 for 6 with runners in scoring position. But the Phillies were able to beat the Astros in those 5 games and move on to the World Series finally. So now Schmidt has a second chance to improve his postseason legacy. In Game 1 of the World Series, Schmidt went 1 for 2 with 2 walks in a 7-6 win over the Royals. And then in Game 2, when he was 1 for 3 already, Schmidt came up to the plate in the 8th inning with the tying run on first base. So Schmidt with the RBI double to tie that game up. And the Phillies ended up winning that game by the score of 6-4, putting them ahead in the series 2-0. And in Game 3, in a 2-1 game in the 5th inning, Schmidt was looking to tie another game, this time being Game 3.
Pitched awfully well for these Royals.
Drilled deep, left field. It is high in the air toward the bullpen. Willie Wilson. It is tied up at 2. Mike Schmidt hits a home run very high into the bullpen for the Phillies in left field.
Seems like these Phillies really can't get going until they get behind. George Brett's home run in the first inning gave the Royals a lead. Phillies came back, top of the second.
So Mike Schmidt ties it up. Another clutch moment for Mr. Schmidt. Unfortunately, though, that was Schmidt's only highlight of the game, and he had some big opportunities in that game. Schmidt was 0 for 4 with runners in scoring position in that game, and the Phillies ended up losing 4-3. And in Game 4, Schmidt went 1 for 3 with a sacrifice fly, therefore an RBI, but that was in a 5-3 loss that tied the series up in that 1980 World Series. And in Game 5, in the 4th inning, with a man on, Schmidt was looking to break a scoreless tie.
Well hit. Center field. Otis is going back near the warning track. It is a home run. 2-0 Phillies. There are some Philly fans here, but right now, a little quiet here at Royal Stadium as Mike Schmidt hits his second home run of this series, and the Phillies lead 2-0.
So Schmidt puts the Phillies on the board and gives them some life, trying to give some momentum back to the Phils. And the Phillies ended up winning that game 4-3 with Schmidt going 2 for 4 with 2 RBI and 2 runs scored. So he did score after that home run. Then in Game 6, with the series going back to Philly, in the third inning, Schmidt came up in a scoreless tie with the bases loaded.
Base hit, right field. Here comes one run in. Smith is going to score. Heading for third is Rose. Smith stumbles, and now he finally comes across. He was late coming around. He fell again, and it's a 2-0 ball game. Fastball out over the plate. A little bit.
So Schmidt once again coming up clutch for the Phillies. And Schmidt ended up going 1 for 3 with a walk in that game with those 2 RBI in a 4-1 win, making Mike Schmidt a World Series champion. And throughout that series, he hit .381 with an 1176 OPS and 7 RBI in those 6 games. And with all those highlights, with those great stats, Mike Schmidt won 1980 World Series MVP.
Mike Schmidt absolutely ruled 1980. Like a World Series championship, a World Series MVP, a regular season MVP, a Gold Glove, a Silver Slugger, an All-Star, and I'm pretty sure he had a kid that year too.
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
Yep.
Yeah, because that comparison was made to Mookie Betts in 2018.
We were like, was Mookie Betts the first person to win a MVP, World Series, Silver Slugger, All-Star, All-Star, Gold Glove, and have a kid in the same year? No, actually, Mike Schmidt did it all in 1980, and he won World Series MVP too.
Yeah, he absolutely killed that year. Yeah, I mean
that has to have been the best year of his life.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to think so. I mean, like I'm trying to think of if there's a list of regular season MVPs who won World Series MVPs.
I don't think so. There's no way.
I'm trying to think, probably, definitely before our time, there was probably someone who was able to do it. But
when did they start giving out World Series MVP? Like that wasn't always a thing, was it?
Yeah, no, it wasn't in like the 20s and 30s.
Because like Lou Gehrig would have won like 7.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they probably didn't start that until maybe the 50s or 60s.
That makes sense.
Once they could like commercialize it. But Mike Schmidt, 1980 regular season MVP, 1980 World Series MVP. That's the best way to go about a year. And now, he's kind of ramping it up in 1981. So, we've gone over this season plenty of times. There was a strike. There was a strike in the middle of the season. And before that strike, Mike Schmidt hit .284 with a 963 OPS and a 165 weighted runs created plus. Very, very good. And the Phillies went 31-21 in this half, and it ended up first in the NL East, securing a spot in the playoffs, of course, because the first half and the second half winners of the division made it to the playoffs. And the MLB returned its 1981 season with the All-Star game, because that strike kind of went on during the summer. So they figured, let's bring this season back with the All-Star game, get some eyes back on it. And that was where Mike Schmidt was looking to gain some momentum to have a very good second half.
Straight away center field. Winfield is going back, way back. He'll not get this one.
So Mike Schmidt not only gets a home run in an All-Star game, gives his team the lead as well. They were down 4-3. Now they were up 5-4. And then, that home run probably did give him some momentum because he had a crazy second half. Even though his team was already in the playoffs, he was still mashing. In that second half, he hit 356 with a 12-14 OPS, a 234 weighted runs created plus, 17 home runs, and 50 RBI in 50 games. And he ended up finishing 9th on the total season in average with a 316. And he also did well with runners in scoring position, hitting 331 with runners in scoring position. And he ended up also finishing 7th in defensive WAR along with those offensive accolades. And Schmidt led the league in total bases, runs scored with 78, walks with 73, home runs with 31, RBI with 91, on-base percentage with a 435, slugging with a 644, OPS with a 1080, OPS plus with a 198, and weighted runs created plus with also a 198. And no one in Major League Baseball was within 140 points of Schmidt's OPS. Unreal in 1981. And Schmidt ended up leading the league, obviously, in B-WAR and F-WAR, and he won his second consecutive MVP, his second consecutive Silver Slugger, and his 6th consecutive Gold Glove. And his 1980 is the only season in the live ball era with 1.28 plus D-WAR and an OPS
you mean his
plus.
1981?
His 1981 is the only season in the live ball era with a 1.28 plus D-WAR and an OPS plus of 195 or better.
How about that?
So now, after the Phillies had a good first half, they get to be in the postseason. So we'll get into that postseason. That was where in each of the first 2 games of the NLDS, Schmidt went 0 for 3 with a walk in each of those first 2 games. And the Phillies lost each of those games by the score of 3-1. So pretty identical for Schmidt and the Phillies. Then in game 3, Schmidt went 2 for 3 with a walk in a 6-2 win over the Expos. And in game 4, Schmidt broke a scoreless tie in the first inning with a 2-run home run, and he ended up going 1 for 3 with a walk in that game in a 6-5 win. And then in a decisive game 5, Schmidt went 1 for 4 in a 3-0 loss to the Expos. And throughout the series, Schmidt had a pretty good series, 250 average with a 900 OPS. So now the extreme hardware era of Mike Schmidt's career is over, but now we get into, Schmidt is into his 30s, but he's continuing dominance. He's being extremely, extremely consistent and just, still dominating the league heading into his late 30s.
So in 1982, Mike Schmidt hit 280 with a 949 OPS that makes for a 161 OPS plus and 161 weighted runs created plus. He led the league in walks with 107, as well as OPS, OPS plus, and weighted runs created plus. He got 3rd in B-WAR and 3rd in F-WAR, so he was 3rd on both websites. He ended up finishing 6th in the MVP vote and won both Gold Glove and Silver Slugger. However, the Phillies went 89-73, a good record, but not good enough. They finished 2nd in the National League East.
And in 1983, Schmidt hit 255 with a 923 OPS, 156 OPS plus, and 152 weighted runs created plus. And he finished 2nd in OPS, while he led the league in walks with a career high 128, home runs with 40, on-base percentage with a 399, and he also led the league in 1983 in OPS plus and weighted runs created plus. And he also finished 4th in B-WAR and 3rd in F-WAR. And he finished 3rd in the MVP vote, and he won the Gold Glove and also won the Silver Slugger once again. And it is one of 2 seasons in baseball history with 40 plus home runs, 125 plus walks, and 0.8 plus D-WAR.
How about that?
That other season is Babe Ruth's 1923. I guess in his younger days he was good enough defensively, I guess. And now we go on to and the Phillies also went 90-72 and won the National League East back in the playoffs. So in the postseason, in Schmidt's first plate appearance of the NLCS against the Dodgers, Schmidt was looking to once again break a scoreless tie.
A year, the last 10 years. And he hits a high fly ball into deep center. Back goes Landreau on the track at the wall. Times the leap and can't get it. Home run for Mike Schmidt. That's the 10th home run he's hit against Jerry Royce. And the Phillies have a 1-0 lead.
Make no bones about it. He is the franchise, the big man, and you can try to pitch around him and don't let him beat you, but he'll widen his strike zone and do exactly what he did. And there was nothing cheap about that one. Center field.
So Schmidt once again showing some very good playoff performance, unlike earlier in his career. And that ended up being the only run of the game. So it was very, very important. And Mike Schmidt on the day ended up going 2 for 3 with a walk, along with that home run. And in game 2, Schmidt went 1 for 4 in a 4-1 loss. Then in game 3, he went 1 for 3 with a walk in a 7-2 win. And in game 4, he went 3 for 5 with an RBI double in a 7-2 win, which advanced the Phillies to the World Series once again. And in this series, Schmidt hit .467 with a 1329 OPS throughout the series. Definitely played a big role in that one. And unfortunately, this momentum kind of stopped for Schmidt and the rest of the Phillies lineup, as in the 1983 World Series, the Orioles pitching absolutely dominated, and the Phillies offense only hit .195 with a .536 OPS. And Schmidt was even worse. He went 1 for 20 with no walks or extra base hits. So
that is a 100 OPS.
A nice 100 OPS for you. And the Orioles won that series in 5 games. And now we head on to 1984.
So now in 1984, Mike Schmidt just about stays par for the course. He hits .277 with a .919 OPS, a 155 OPS plus, and a 154 weighted runs created plus. This gives him 10th in D-WAR. He also leads the league in home runs with 36, RBI with 106, OPS plus, and weighted runs created plus. He also got 3rd in B-WAR and 2nd in F-WAR. He got 7th in the MVP vote, won the Gold Glove and the Silver Slugger. This remains the only season by a player in their age 34 season or older with 35 plus home runs, 90 plus walks, and a 1 plus D-WAR. As for the total product, the Phillies were exactly 500. They finished 81-81, 4th in the National League East.
And in 1985, it was kind of the tale of 2 seasons for Mike Schmidt. In his first 53 games, he had .211 with a .665 OPS, maybe showing signs of age as the media might put it. But in his next and final 105 games, he hit .309 with a .1024 OPS, really righting that ship and self-correcting. And Schmidt also, faced a different challenge during this season. He played 106 games at first base, as the season prior, Pete Rose, their usual first baseman in the 80s, thus up to that point, had left the team, and now there was a hole at first base. Schmidt was playing first base, and Schmidt ended up hitting .277 with a .907 OPS in that 1985 season, with 149 OPS plus and 149 weighted runs created plus. And he finished 4th in OPS, 6th in OPS plus, and 5th in weighted runs created plus, and finished 9th in F-WAR. And the Phillies went 75-87 and finished 5th in the National League East. And now we're on to 1986.
So now this year, Mike Schmidt does it again. He hits 290 with a 937 OPS, 153 OPS plus, and 148 weighted runs created plus. He ended up finishing second in weighted runs created plus, and he led the league in home runs with 37, RBI with 119, slugging with a 547 OPS and OPS plus. He finished second in B-WAR and third in F-WAR. He got his third MVP in 1986. He got his 10th Gold Glove and his 6th Silver Slugger. Did he have every Silver Slugger since it existed except for 1 year by this point?
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Because it became a thing in 80, so that would be 7 seasons. He has 6.
I'm trying to think. Or wait.
80, yeah. 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86. 7 seasons. That's his 6th Silver Slugger. He missed it in 1 season.
I might have done the math wrong because I don't know if there was a year where he didn't have the Silver Slugger. Yeah, my bad. That's actually his 7th Silver Slugger.
I guess he has every Silver Slugger.
Or no, wait.
Since it existed.
Or no, yeah, it is his 6th Silver Slugger because he played first base in 85. So never mind.
Well then. It is the only season by a player in their age 36 season or older with 35 plus home runs, 85 plus walks, and a D-WAR above -0.1. That's quite the standard you're setting there for D-WAR.
Well, replacement level is still a challenge.
Yeah, especially when you're 36. The Phillies went 86 and 75. They finished second in the National League East.
And into 1987, this would be a special season. Not because of potentially maybe repeating an MVP, but because he was approaching that big milestone. And on April 18th, Schmidt came up in the 9th with the Phillies trailing 6-5 with 2 men on and 2 men out, looking to put the team ahead.
Catch by Robinson. The 3-0 pitch. Swing and long drive. There it is. Number 500. The career 500th home run for Michael Jack Schmidt. And the Phillies have regained the lead at Pittsburgh 8-6. And the Phillies dugout comes swarming out to home plate. Boy, what a time, and what a time to pick for number 500. The whole dugout's out there. You don't see Schmidt get very emotional going around the bases on a home run. He jumped on second with both feet. He banged his fist high around third base. The whole bullpen now is coming out.
And the great Michael Jack Schmidt hits number 500 in a very clutch spot as well. Joins an exclusive club, and on that season he was still elite. A lot of the times when we're talking about a guy who hit his 500th home run, usually he's on the downhill of his career, but definitely not Mike Schmidt. In this season, he hit 293 with a 936 OPS, 142 OPS plus, and 139 weighted runs created plus, and he finished 9th in OPS, 9th in OPS plus, and 9th in weighted runs created plus. And he also finished 14th in the MVP vote. And it is his 1987 is the only season by a player in their age 37 season or older with 110 plus RBI and 1.1 plus D-WAR. It is also the only season by a player in their age 37 season or older with 35 plus home runs and 1 plus D-WAR. How about that? And his 1987 is also the only season by a player in their age 37 season or older with a 935 plus OPS and 1 plus D-WAR. How about that? And the Phillies ended up going 80 and 82 and finishing 4th in the National League East. And this caps off, usually with, the history players, we talk about, a 5-year, an unbelievable 5-year stretch, unbelievable 4-year stretch. But with Mike Schmidt, he kind of just put his foot on the gas in 1974 and didn't let off for about 14 years. He may not have put up, like a 10-win season at any point, but he was extremely consistent and, got the job done for 14 consecutive years where he was just amazing. And from 1974 to 1987, he had only one season with less than 30 home runs and only one season with an OPS plus of 140. Only one season with an OPS plus of 140 or worse. He also had 5+ baseball reference WAR and 5+ FWAR in every single season of this 14-year stretch. Baseball Reference defines a 5-win season as all-star level. So according to Baseball Reference, he was all-star level in all 14 of these seasons. And he had 6+ Baseball Reference WAR in all but one of these 14 seasons. Schmidt also averaged a 274, 387, 546, 933 slash line, 153 OPS plus, 153 weighted runs created plus, and also 36 home runs, 104 RBI, 7.4 BWAR, and 7.4 FWAR per year from 1974 to 1987. And in this span, Schmidt led the league in plate appearances, runs scored, RBI, walks, and home runs. And no other position player, and this is the most ridiculous thing, no other position player between 1974 and 1987 was within 25 BWAR or FWAR during was within 25 BWAR or FWAR of Mike Schmidt during this 14-year span. So we mentioned like an all-star type season is 5 wins above replacement. It would take 5 of those seasons, or it would probably, or actually 6 of those seasons to surpass Mike Schmidt. If you had 5 all-star level seasons and Schmidt didn't produce any wins above replacement, they would still not be able to touch Schmidt. That's how good he was from 74 to 87. But this is where, the history episode starts to take a little dive into motion, as, obviously everyone has to go through their breakdown phase. Mike Schmidt's from 1988 to 1989, his body starts to break down, and he's starting to show sort of his age.
So in 1988, Mike Schmidt had injuries to his rotator cuff and knees, and he didn't play a game past August 12th of that season. And he ended up hitting 249 with a 742 OPS, 112 OPS plus, and a 109 weighted runs created plus. Still decently above average, but just not what it used to be. And he had just 12 home runs in 108 games. And in 1989, he came back fully healthy, and he had a home run in each of his first 2 games. And it seemed like he was doing pretty well. From May 2nd through May 2nd, he was hitting 275 with an 893 OPS. But then things took a turn. From May 3rd to May 28th, he went 5 for 57 with no extra base hits. And he decided that was it. On May 29th, he announced his retirement from the game of baseball.
And now Mike Schmidt is away from playing the game of baseball, had a great career. Now we're in his post-career. Schmidt, in 1990, he was a color analyst on the Phillies broadcasting team, but that was only for one season. And in 1995, he received the game's greatest individual honor. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame with 96.5% of the vote. And since 2002, Schmidt has been the hitting coach for the Phillies at each spring training for the Phillies. And in 2004, he managed the Phillies single A affiliate. Also in 2014, Schmidt started commentating for the Phillies on Sunday home games, and then started also doing Saturday home games in 2015. And he did that weekend home game stretch of Phillies broadcasting through 2019. And I'm guessing it stopped when, 2020 happened. But he may be coming back, I would assume, once the world is back in place, whenever that may be. And Schmidt also, one reason why he may be, at risk here, he battled stage 3 melanoma cancer in 2013, but then announced that he was cancer-free in March 2014. So a cancer survivor that Mike Schmidt is. And he has continuously sponsored an annual fishing event that raises money for cystic fibrosis. And this has raised over $1.5 million since 2001. So some philanthropy for Mike Schmidt. And in 2008, he released a wine in which proceeds for the sale of this wine are given to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation.
Don't mean to interrupt, but real quick, this coming in from Jeff Passon, quote, "A trade that would send outfielder Andrew Benintendi to the Kansas City Royals is not complete, but the Red Sox, Royals, and Mets are working through details on a three-way deal that is expected to be finalized," sources tell ESPN.
All right. Well, I hope the Red Sox try to go after Bradley Jr. because it looks like a very incomplete outfield.
Well, it depends on who they get in this trade.
I guess, yeah, that's true. But if you trade Benintendi, it looks like it's only Verdugo out there.
And Renfroe.
And oh yeah, Hunter Renfroe.
So now we're going to get into Mike Schmidt's all-time rank. The only man to lead the league in home runs more than Schmidt is Babe Ruth, which is perhaps you've heard of him. He was all right.
Yeah.
Mike Schmidt is 18th all-time in walks with 1,507, and he's 16th in home runs with 548. He is 19th in position player B-WAR with 106.9 and 16th in position player F-WAR with 106.5. That is probably one of the smallest differences between B-WAR and F-WAR in a player's career that I've seen.
Yeah, they seem to agree. And also surprisingly, I saw the OPS plus and weighted runs created plus were awfully close.
Well, yeah, that's usually the case though.
But usually, especially as the number increases, OPS plus seems to be maybe higher. 5 to 10 points higher than weighted runs created plus. Usually they were within 2 points of each other. That's some real nerd stuff, but yeah.
For sure. So among players to play at least 50% of their games at third base, he is the all-time leader in home runs, B-WAR, F-WAR, and OPS plus minimum 1,500 plate appearances.
And now we get into the official Mike Schmidt segment of
How about that?
So Mike Schmidt Mike Schmidt's 9 seasons with 5+ offensive WAR and 1.1+ defensive WAR are tied for the most in baseball history.
How about that?
His 3 seasons with 5.5+ offensive WAR and 2.2+ defensive WAR are also tied for the most in baseball history.
How about that?
And Schmidt's 11 seasons with 35+ home runs and 80+ walks are tied for the most in baseball history with Babe Ruth.
How about that?
And Schmidt had 8 seasons with 35+ home runs, 80+ walks, and 1+ defensive wins above replacement. No one else in baseball history has had more than 4 such seasons.
How about that?
And also, out of anyone in the 500 home run club, Mike Schmidt has the highest defensive WAR.
How about that?
And he is the only player in baseball history with 1,500+ walks and 10+ D-WAR.
How about that?
So now, on to Mike Schmidt's legacy to close the book on the man. One thing that he'll always be remembered in Phillies folklore. He was a Philly for life. All 18 seasons of Mike Schmidt's career were as a Philly, and he was a big part of the biggest moment of their franchise, arguably. He was the MVP during the Phillies World Series championship season in both the regular season and the World Series. And this was the Phillies won their first World Series ever in 1980. The World Series had been around since 1903, but they were still unable to win one, even when there were only 16 teams in the league. And finally, they won it in 1980, and Mike Schmidt was the biggest contributor to that. And second to him was Steve Carlton, who we've also covered. But anyway, Mike Schmidt was the biggest contributor to that, very clearly so, and it was a big championship. Also, Schmidt consistently led the league in home runs. It's pretty weird to see that. He's 16th all time in home runs career wise, but he dominated that era in terms of hitting home runs. This was the late 70s, early 80s. There weren't that many home run hitters, but Mike Schmidt was that premier home run hitter of that time, and that should be recognized. Maybe that's why I don't didn't have a great knowledge of like the 70s and 80s, because there weren't a lot of home run hitters. This was kind of the era of getting on base, stealing bases, but Mike Schmidt was sort of still the antithesis of that. Was able to hit home runs and lead the league in home runs 8 times. Only Babe Ruth has led the league in home runs more times than Mike Schmidt. And what I'll say is, when people think of Mike Schmidt, they think, of course, 500 home run club, led the league in home runs a bunch, of course. But I think his defense, at the time, they definitely gave him his credit. He had 10 Gold Gloves. But his defense probably doesn't get recognized enough historically as him being, not only like the greatest offensive third baseman of all time, but one of the greatest defensive third basemen of all time as well. Obviously guys like Brooks Robinson and probably Adrian Beltre are above him, but he's still one of the greatest to do it both defensively and obviously the best to do it offensively. And lastly, this pretty much goes without saying, and he's universally recognized this way. Mike Schmidt, greatest third baseman of all time. Really nothing to be argued against in that sense. So
I have a take.
Let's go.
I think Mike Schmidt is the prime example of why batting average doesn't matter.
You know what? That's a very good take. I like that.
Yeah.
267 career hitter.
Exactly. Like StatCast has been glitching for me, so I can't get this up. But I'm curious to know how many people with at least a 145 OPS plus have an average below 270.
All right. You know what? We'll do a little bonus round of this. StatHead. Let's see if it works for me. Hopefully. I gotta log in.
Try to get some details on this Benintendi trade.
But yeah, I mean that's kind of hard to accomplish. But yeah, I mean the guy walked a ton, for sure. He had 11 seasons with 35 plus home runs and 80 plus walks, and he was also able to do it defensively. But yeah, like that's why it frustrates me when people talk about average. And like I remember when people were slamming like Bryce Harper, like he's a 260.
Yeah, like that's the exact example I was gonna like bring up.
Yeah, I mean like I don't care if a guy's hitting 260 if their on base percentage is 390. Schmidt had a 267 average, a 380 on base percentage. So I obviously weigh the on base percentage a lot more. Like he was great at getting on base, and that's that. I'm looking for this here.
Yeah.
I guess I should set a plate appearance minimum.
Say like 9,000.
9,000 plate appearance.
Yeah, because that's like not really cherry picking because he had over 10,000, so that leaves some wiggle room.
I gotta go to combined season.
I always do that too on StatHeader. It's like, oh yeah, no one had a single. I guarantee you, no one had a single season with 9,000 plate appearances.
Never mind 9,000 plate appearances. Willie McCovey had exactly a 270 batting average. So Mike Schmidt's the only one.
Look at that.
to have an OPS plus of 145 or better and a batting average below 270. So how about
He
that?
is they. Hey, let's say that in the form of a how about that. He's the only player in the history of baseball with a 145 plus OPS plus, 9,000 plus career plate appearances, and a batting average below 270. And we just debunked batting average for the 70 millionth time.
Yeah, there we go. Omar Vizquel had a better batting average than Mike Schmidt.
That is a fact.
So, hey.
And more plate appearances, too.
Yeah. You could argue better production out of Omar Vizquel. But so that's our takeaway from today. Omar Vizquel had a better batting average than Mike Schmidt.
That is a fact.
That's a fact. That's a fact, people. So take it what you will. Either you take it as Omar Vizquel was better than Mike Schmidt, or batting average is maybe not the most reliable statistic in the world.
No.
We know where we stand on that. But anything more on Mike Schmidt?
I just needed to get that out there.
I
had a take and I just proved it correct.
That's an extremely good take. Yeah.
That might be the best take I've had in the history, or the second best take I've ever had in the history of this show.
Yeah. There's literally, with that stat, there's no other better example than Mike Schmidt in terms of debunking batting average. But yeah, the guy got his walks, guy got his home runs.
The Red Sox are getting Franchi Cordero.
That's fantastic.
That's not fantastic.
I love hearing that. But yeah, and now we get into and this is going to be different. Usually we pick player and team, but since we're only doing one subject matter a week, we already know our team for next week, where we will be doing the 1988 Dodgers. But for 2 weeks from now, we will be selecting our player for this for our episode in 2 weeks. The next player we will be talking about. I'm not gonna. You know what? I've done this like 25 times. I'm not gonna explain it. I'm just gonna ask you, what player? We have number 1, 2, and 5 available. What player are we going to be talking about next week?
Number 1.
Number one is a guy I've been waiting for. I don't know if I told you, or I don't know if you remember this, but I remember you asked me, like, who's a guy that you're kind of particularly excited for? And I was talked about a guy who's like, he was great. He was great when he played. He kind of gets overlooked. He had like a shorter career, but he has a very good story as well. This guy, he faced some, bigotry in his life, along with being a fantastic player. But it's not that famous of a story, actually. And this was pre Jackie Robinson. He wasn't facing the same retribution because he was black. He was facing it because he was Jewish, and he's the original Hammer and Hank. Next week we're going to be talking about Hank Greenberg.
Nice. Wow. That is a toss.
Yes.
That is an absolute Hail Mary of a player to put on this list.
I love it, and I'm going with the theme. I went with the theme of also, I wanted to get a lot of war veterans in. This guy's a veteran. He missed a significant portion of his career being, in war service. He also was the first player to miss a World Series game because of Rosh Hashanah. And Sandy Koufax later became the second player to do that. And
that is tremendous. Great
postseason performer as well. One of the great right-handed hitters of all time, I believe. He
had over 1,000 career OPS, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, second highest OPS for a right-handed hitter of all time, minimum like 5,000 plate appearances.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Wow.
I'm excited. I'm excited for this one. We didn't have a lot of storyline for Mike Schmidt today because he didn't have a Society for American Baseball research page, unfortunately, but we're going to have a lot of storyline for Hank Greenberg when it comes up in 2 weeks. But we have the 1988 Dodgers to get to next week, and we hope you enjoyed this episode of Above Replacement Radio. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the videos with us, go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. Also, if you want to follow us on social media, follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianta. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran, and follow our show Instagram for all the updates on the podcast at Above Replacement Radio. And we hope you enjoyed the Mike Schmidt episode, and we hope to see you next Tuesday, where we're going to be talking all MLB news, maybe potentially a surprise as well. We'll see. And next Thursday, where we're going to be talking about the 1988 Dodgers. See you then.